Hey friends, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to talk about shitty research and people who believe shitty research. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, which is our home for all of our content. That's where you can find our books, our documentaries, podcasts, you can find essays, you can find conscious music, and so much more. I want to invite you guys to follow us on all of our independent media social platforms. Of course, you can find that all in the show notes in the description below the video you are watching. If you'd like to support us, you can do so by getting CBD or Kratom from My Brave Botanicals, and if it's your first order, you get a free ounce of Kratom, and you can support us, especially during these crazy times. Kratom can be helpful with stress and anxiety, so check that out. All right, so you guys have probably heard by now, some of you have been hearing it from different sectors, mainly from the Q crowd, but from others as well, that Donald Trump nationalized the Federal Reserve, and depending on which way you fall on the side of the spectrum, that's either a really good thing, a really scary thing, or, as it really is, total bullshit. It's not true. Let's just start right off the bat. It's not true, guys. It is not true. So where did this idea come from? Where did the Q people start getting this concept from? Right here, Jem Bianco from Bloomberg. The Fed's cure risks being worse than the disease. And this is March 27th. Here we are, April 3rd. So just a week ago. And if we could please direct our attention to this right here. Bloomberg opinion piece. This is an opinion piece. And as with any opinion piece, it has a mix of facts and opinions. So let's get into what this thing is talking about. The economic debate of the day centers on whether the cure of an economic shutdown is worse than the disease of the virus. Similarly, we need to ask if the cure of the Federal Reserve getting so deeply into corporate bonds, asset-backed securities, commercial paper, and exchange trade funds, ETFs, is worse than the disease, seizing financial markets. It may be. So, they get a little deeper here, and it says in the past few weeks, the Fed has cut rates by 150 basis points to near zero and run through its entire 2008 crisis handbook. That wasn't enough to calm the markets, so the central bank has announced $1 trillion a day, $1 trillion, can you get that number, in repurchase agreements and unlimited quantitative easing, quantitative easing eternity, which includes a hard-to-understand $625 billion of bond buying a week going forward. Now, if all that's foreign and Latin to you, don't worry about it. We're not really going to get into too much of the financial side of things. There are people who are better suited to do that. All you really need to know is that the Federal Reserve is a criminal banking organization, as are all central banks who use fractional reserve banking to enslave the people economically and to push their agenda forward. And during this time of crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, the panic, whatever you want to call it, people are obviously not working. The economy is taking a hit in many different sectors. People are feeling that. And so the Fed is trying to, quote-unquote, save the economy. And Donald Trump, in the stimulus package that was signed about a week ago, which includes trillions of dollars for the Federal Reserve, billions of dollars for the CDC, and for other pet projects, they claim they're trying to save the economy. And that's basically what this article, this opinion piece is talking about, and is asking a legitimate question that whether or not the Fed's actions are going to be better or worse for the economy, if it's actually going to be worse in the long term, because many of us have been seeing what's happening and realize that even if, what are they predicting now? I saw somebody claim 10 million people are going to die. Donald Trump and Fauci has said that 100,000, 200,000 people are going to die within the next 2 weeks, and I guess we'll see. I disagree. I don't think those numbers are going to add up, but I could be wrong, and we'll see. But folks are saying, regardless of how many people die from the virus and what happens, we are likely to see more repercussions and dangerous actions coming from the economic side of things. That the long-term response to this, the long-term effect will be coming via the economy. So let's just take a look. I'm going to search the word nationalize. Here we go. So he goes through the description of what the Fed is doing. Says the Fed did these various actions. Again, you can read all this, but this is the whole point where people are claiming and pointing, look, Donald Trump did a sneaker move and now he just became control of the Fed, and oh my God, now the good guys are going to win, the bad guys are going down. So in this opinion piece, an opinion piece written by one writer, not an a bill that passed that clearly states that Donald Trump has nationalized the Federal Reserve, and now it's back under the control of the U.S. government, as instead of being an independent entity, which is neither corporate nor government. Yes, that criminal organization knows the Federal Reserve. All those reports stem from this one opinion piece. And this is the key part here. It says, in other words, the federal government is nationalizing large swaths of the financial markets. The Fed is providing the money to do it, and BlackRock Inc. will be doing the trades. The scheme essentially merges the Fed and the Treasury into one organization, so meet your new Fed chairman, Donald Trump. Now, that's all that's anything in there. There's nothing else anywhere that indicates that Trump has now become the head of the Federal Reserve, or that the Fed has been nationalized. He said the scheme essentially merges the Fed and the Treasury into one organization, and so meet your new Fed chairman, right? I mean, do you get what that's saying? It's not saying that's actually what happened. And then he goes on to say, in 2008, when something similar was done, it was on a smaller scale. Since few understood it, the Bush and Obama administrations ceded total control of those acronym programs to then Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke. He unwound them at first available opportunity, but now 12 years later we have a much better understanding of how they work, and we have a president who has made it very clear he is displeased how the central bankers haven't used their considerable power to force the Dow Jones Industrial Average to at least 10,000 points higher. So it is saying Trump's mad that the bankers won't manipulate the currency and the economy further. When the Fed was rightly alarmed by the current dysfunction in the fixed income markets, they felt the need to act. This was the correct thought. But to get the authority to stabilize these private markets, central bankers needed the Treasury to agree to nationalize, or quote, own them, so they could provide the funds to do it. In effect, the Fed is giving the Treasury access to its printing press. And if you think about this, originally the U.S. Constitution, Congress, and the Treasury are supposed to be the only ones that have the ability to print money and to make money, but that was long ago sold and given to the Fed. So they're saying now the Fed is giving access back to the Treasury. This means that in the extreme, the administration will be free to use its control, not the Fed's control, of these funds to instruct the Fed to prevent more money, right? But even with all that in there, it does not clearly state, and there is no changing of the guard that people think they're looking for. This is just an opinion piece from Jim Bianco, who's the president and founder of Bianco Research, a provider of data-driven insights into the global economy and financial markets. He may have a stake in the areas he writes about. So, could there be a conflict of interest? It also says this column is an opinion piece and does not reflect Bloomberg LP or its owners. So, again, guys, this is an opinion piece. This is some guy's interpretation of what happened. It's not a fact that what happened with the bill was to turn Trump into the new Fed chairman. I will also include this piece in the show notes that kind of gives some more information. It says, is Trump nationalizing the Fed? And it goes through talking about how the Washington Post is making these claims. It goes through some other areas, talks about Forbes magazine. And it says right here, and I think this is a more correct analysis, Donald Trump and the Fed are destroying the U.S. dollar. He's not some hero savior that many of you want to believe, but unfortunately, shitty channels with no credibility, like this, The Greatest Truth Never Told, with 173,000 subscribers, has put this out. Thankfully, this video only has 12,000 views. Trump, the head of the Fed and Treasury unite. And I believe this guy is a QAnon person, if I remember correctly. I've looked into him before. But unfortunately, even some people who I've considered allies or friends have gone down this rabbit hole. And Max Egan of the Crow House, he put out this video, Goodbye Federal Reserve, Hello Trump Coin. And Max is not taking the approach that it's a good thing. He's saying, like, this is, Donald Trump's not one of the good guys. But still, the point is, he's still repeating something that's not true. I mean, I've only listened to 5 minutes, 51 seconds of this 18-minute video, and I will watch the whole thing to see if all of a sudden Max pulls a switcheroo at the end. But as I told him here at the end, Max, Trump did not nationalize the Fed. This is straight up misinformation. Sorry, but it's just not factual. And when I look into this, there are people who are actually commenting and saying, oh, I'm unsubscribing because there's no fact to this. Like, where's the evidence? People are trying to get Max to realize that this isn't true. And unfortunately, and no disrespect, Max, if you see this, like, we've worked together, we've collaborated, but this is why I talk about, guys, that there's a difference between people who are just YouTubers, people who just walk and talk or just get in front of the camera and say whatever they want, and people who, like myself, who actually consider myself journalists and try to maintain some level of credibility and journalistic ethics. No, that doesn't mean we toe the mainstream line, but we stick to the facts. And there are people who out there, Max has a following of 218,000 people. This video is about 5 days old and it has 57,000 views. And a lot of people believe it. People are just listening to what he's saying and they think that this is, accurate. Thankfully, somebody says, can somebody show me one reliable reference which explains Trump is nationalizing the Federal Reserve? And I responded saying it's false. People are basing this off of an opinion piece. I thought it was from the Wall Street Journal or Forbes, but it's actually Bloomberg. It's not a fact. So, this, like I said, this isn't the most important video I've ever done, and I've got several more videos coming out today that are going to be much more important than this. But I'm just sitting here going through my morning news and seeing what's up and what people are talking about, what different channels are looking into. And unfortunately, the Q crowd thinks Trump nationalized the Fed, and they think it's a good thing. People who don't even like Trump think he nationalized the Fed and are asking about it, but that's not anything that happened. Now, you could argue that some of these maneuvers here, as this person tries to do, essentially merge the Fed and the Treasury into one organization, but that's not look up the definition of essentially and look up the definition of opinion piece, and then show me any credible source of information that is reporting that the recent actions by the Fed and Donald Trump mean that the Fed is now under the control of the national government. And then the other thing to think about is, why in the hell do you guys think that's a good thing? Do you think that making somebody a dictator like Donald Trump is a good idea? I know many of the Q crowd, they think it's a good idea to just give him unilateral power to round up the bad guys, the Democrats and Hillary Clinton, and, execute them in mass trials and this and that. Like, they don't want any accountability. They want another tyrant in control. So if it's Donald Trump, as long as he's doing what we want and he's taking out the bad guys, then it's okay. But guys, that's not, I'm not a constitutionalist, rah American, but if you care at all about the American experiment, it was not meant to be a dictatorship or a king where one person can just make unilateral decisions. In fact, that's been the problem with Clinton, with Bush, with Obama, and now with Trump. It's the same thing. So if you care about liberty, you care about freedom, you care about, the basic value of human life, then you wouldn't want one person in charge of a massive institution like the Federal Reserve. You would want to abolish it, to end it, not to continue it under some benevolent dictator. Stop falling for the bullshit, guys, and call out the other YouTubers who are out there putting out garbage information right now, because it's more important than ever for us to be skeptical and to question that, because we are witnessing the flood. Event 201 talked about flooding the people with quote-unquote credible information, but it also talked about flooding people, I believe what they meant, not just credible information from the CDC, which, credible, you can take that if you think it's credible, but flooding people with disinformation. 5G's coronavirus, Trump's the head of the Federal Reserve, all kinds of garbage out there. We are being flooded with it. It's more important than ever to be discerning and to question everything and to challenge those YouTubers and Facebookers and social media commenters when they put out bullshit information. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, like, follow, and if you want to support us, do so on patreon.com/Derrick Broze or via PayPal or any other way you'd like to, cryptocurrencies, etc. Please stay safe. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.